All right, guys, so today we're going over the review sheet because your test over this chapter is tomorrow. Now, the first thing on the review sheet is our corresponding angles and alternate interior, alternate exterior, and consecutive angles. Now, our corresponding angles are going to be in a similar spot on the line for two lines that are cut by a transversal. So for our setup here, we had 8 and 1, 7 and 2, 4 and 5, and then 3, angle 3 and angle 6, because they kind of correspond to each other, where they're in the relatively same position of the line and the transversal. So are we good with corresponding angles? Yes? Yes? Yes. Alternate exterior angles, well, they're outside the two lines and on opposite sides of the transversal. So for us, that would be 8 and 6, and then angle 7 and angle 5. Because they are alternate, they're on opposite sides of the transversal, and they're outside the two lines, so they would be alternate exterior angles. So we have our corresponding angles and our alternate exterior angles. Questions on either one of these here? All right, 3 and 4. Our alternate interior angles, so these would be between the two lines and on opposite sides of the transversal. So this here would be angle 4 and angle 2, and then angle 3 and angle 1 would be our alternate interior angles. Now the consecutive interior angles, again, this time they're going to be on the same side of the transversal and between the lines. So this would be 4 and 1, and then 3 and 2. And for these here, 1 through 4, you need to make sure you have specified which ones go together. Okay? You need to specify which ones go together, which ones are connected. Because if you just put down this for consecutive interior angles as your answer, I'm going to mark it wrong. I'm just going to straight up mark it wrong. Because are these consecutive interior angles? Well, yes. Which ones go together? By just looking at this here, well, it would be that they would pair up like this here, but if you just put the 4 angles down or just put angles down and don't put any way to connect the two, showing which ones go together, I'm just going to mark it wrong. So you need something like how I've been writing it down, this angle and this angle, these two angles. These are the ones that are connected. Some way to show which ones go together. You're going to need that. So any questions? On 1 through 4. Any questions on 1 through 4? Okay, so let's look at the next ones. Let's look at these here. Now, for problems 5 through 10, classify the angle pair. So are there any questions on these here, 5 through 10 in particular, that you want to look at or have questions on? Or how they work together? Number 7, so we have 1 and 14. So 14 is down here, 1 is here. This would be alternate interior angles, because they're between the two lines and they're on opposite sides of the transversal, the line cutting it. Now on this one here, if you put alternate angles, I'd mark it wrong. If you put interior angles, I would mark it wrong, because we have what? We have alternate interior and we have alternate exterior. So just saying that they're interior angles, well, it could be alternate interior or it could be consecutive interior. We have two different types. If you just say that they're alternate, it could be alternate exterior or alternate interior. You're going to have to list the whole name. You can't just abbreviate it to alternate angles. And that's all we're doing. We're just looking, how do the two angles compare? Now we can do 8 and 9. 8 and 9. They're both on the same side of the line, same side of that line, and in between. So this here would be alternate, make sure I can spell, consecutive interior angles. Because they're on the same side of the transversal and between the lines, they're consecutive interior angles. 7 and 9, so number 5 would be corresponding angles. Problem number 9, 10 and 12. 10 and 12 would be corresponding angles. 6 and 13 would be alternate exterior angles, and 8 and 3 would be alternate interior. So we're just naming what are they? How do they relate to each other? Are they alternate interior, alternate exterior, corresponding, or consecutive interior angles? Any other questions on 5 through 10? Any questions on this here? You good with this here? Yes? Think of each statement in the diagram as part of a line. All lines are right angles. All angles are right angles. Which lines or planes contain? We'll come back to this if we have time. I'm not worried about that. Questions on 19 through 24. One of those that y'all want to look at. So if we want to name a pair of parallel lines, we need to see which sets of lines have the parallel arrows on them. So I see that this line and these two lines here are parallel. So I could say that LJ is parallel to HI. And it doesn't matter which letters I could have used for like LJ. So if you had something different, that's fine, as long as it is parallel. So like LJ and HI. Well, I could have said LJ, I could have said LK, I could have said JL, I could have said JK or KL or K. I mean, there's multiple ways we can name these lines, yes? So are they parallel? Yeah. So we could have also done IJ is parallel to QK. And make sure to put the line markers, because since they are lines, we need the line markers above them. I will take off a half a point or a point if those aren't included. So make sure to have those. Perpendicular, there's only really one set of perpendicular lines. AB is perpendicular to BZ because it has the right angle marker, yes? So we know that those are perpendicular. As long as it's specified. As long as it's specified to be 90 degrees. Because even if it's just two lines that make AT and there's no markers on it, we can't assume that it's a right angle, because it works out that 89.9 degrees, especially 89.9 degrees, or even 89 degrees and 90 degrees, are almost indistinguishable between the two. So unless it's stated, we can't assume it. So is AB perpendicular to BZ? Yes, because because they intersect at 90 degrees. Is HQ and JI parallel? HQ, JI, no, they intersect. IJ and PK, no, they intersect, yes? Is IJ and PK, no, they do. They are parallel because we have the markers that tell us so. We have the parallel line markers. Got ahead of myself. IZ and KP perpendicular. IZ. KP, no, because they are parallel. So any questions on this here? Any questions on these? We good with these here? No questions on any of this here so far? Okay. Questions on 25, 26, or 27? Yes. So say it one more time. The answer is
yes, because they didn't intersect.
okay. So, oh, I love that. Well, that statement there is contradictory, isn't it? Because do they intersect? No, because they don't, right? Because that part is true. But what is it asking about? It's asking if they are perpendicular. Perpendicular lines have to intersect, yes? So this should be no, because they do not intersect. Whenever I find the review sheet, I'm going to make a correction on that. Or was that 22 or 24? Yeah, 24. Yeah, so again, if yes, 22 is HQ and JI. Yeah, so 22 and 24 are both no. So again, thank you for pointing that out. When we're done with this here, remind me to make sure to make that change. "25, 26, or 27, is there one of those that we want to look at specifically? Huh? Right, they're all really the same thing, because what we're going to be using for these here for really 25 through 29, I believe, on that page, is we're using our vertical angles, linear pairs, and then alternate interior, alternate exterior corresponding consecutive interior, all of these angle properties to find the measures. So looking at this here, well, 130 and 1 are alternate exterior angles. And alternate exterior angles are what? Are congruent. So the measure of angle 1 is 130 degrees because they're going to be the same. What do we know about 130 degrees in angle 2? They add together to be 180. So 130 plus the measure of angle 2 is equal to, or really we're subtracting 130 from 180, which is, so the measure of angle 2 is 50. So the measure of angle 1 is 130, and the measure of angle 2 is 50.
Somewhere around here.
Yeah. Got that one right? Almost. There should be 70 also. Because for 26, 1 and 70 are between the parallel lines and on opposite sides, so they're congruent. And 1 and 2 are vertical angles, so they're both the same. Or 70 and angle 2 are corresponding angles, so they're the same. Any others on 26 through 29 that y'all want to look at specifically? Huh? So 27. Well, 98 degrees in the measure of angle 1 are vertical angles, so they would be congruent. So one end is going to be 98 degrees because their vertical angles are congruent. Now, angle 1 and angle 2 are consecutive interior angles, so those two add together to be 180. Or we can subtract 98 from 180. 7, 10, 2. And it'll tell us that the measure of angle 2 is 82 degrees. Any other questions on these here? We good with these here? Yes? Questions on 30, 31, or 32? Questions on problems 30, 31, or 32? Any one of those three that we want to look at, or y'all want to look at? 30 and 31? So 30, these two angles are alternate exterior angles, yes? So the measure of these two angles is the same. So what that means for us is that 6x minus 30 is equal to 2x plus 90. We set the angles equal to each other because their measures are the same. Now we need to solve for x. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides to get x on the same side of the equal sign, which will give us 4x minus 30 is equal to, well, those cancel, and I get 90. Now again, I'm still trying to get x by itself, so I'm going to add 30 to both sides, which these will cancel, leaving me with 4x is equal to 120. And last but not least, we're going to divide both sides by 4, so x is equal to 30. Now, since it's not asking what the angle measure is, it's just asking to find the value of x, we're done. We're done. So make sure to read the directions, because if it said find the value of the angle, find the measure of the angle, our next step would just be plugging it back in. Because I could plug it into either one of those. I can do 2 times 30 plus 90. Two times 30 is 60. Plus 90 is 150. So we would just plug it back in if I actually wanted to know the angle, but it doesn't. So any other questions on number 30? We good with number 30? Let's look at 31. These two angles here are consecutive interior angles, and consecutive interior angles add together to be 180. So for us here, we have 4x minus 20 plus 6x plus 100 equals 180. Well, I'm going to you don't have to do this here. I just rearranged them just so we can kind of see what like terms are. So 4x and 6x would add together to give me 10x. Negative 20 plus 100 is plus 80 equals 180. Why was the 20 negative? Well, it was already negative to begin with, yes? It's not that I changed the signs on that. Since it was already negative, we just combined them. If like terms are on the same side of the equal sign, you just combine them. Just put them together, add them together. Now we need to get x by itself. I'm going to subtract 80 from both sides. Because when I do that, I get 10x is equal to 100, and our last step would be to do what? Divide both sides by 10, which tells us x is equal to 10. Any questions on this here? Any questions on 30, 31, or 32? Are we good with these here? Are we good with 30, 31, and 32? Okay, let's look at the next set. (33 through 35). Is there any one of those in particular we want to look at? Well, these here, I will tell you, they're pretty much the exact same thing we just did, except now we're trying to find the value of x that's going to make them parallel. Well, we solve them the exact same way if the lines were parallel, because we're expecting them to be that. So any one of these three that y'all want to look at or want to see done or worked? We're good? This one? So these two here are what? What kind of angles are they? They are consecutive.
Please come to the office. Victoria, please come to the office.
Consecutive exterior angles. Now the book doesn't necessarily talk about this, but these two here are going to add together to be 180. So x minus 10 plus 6x plus 50 equals 180. Because if these add together to be 180, then the lines are parallel. Well, x plus 6x, 1 plus 6 is Negative 10 plus 50 would be plus 40 is equal to 180. We combined like terms. We combined our x terms and we combined our constants, our numbers without a variable. And what do we do next? We would subtract 40 from both sides. When we subtract 40 from both sides, 40 and 40 cancels, leaving me with 7x is equal to 140. From here, we would divide both sides by 7, which gives us x is equal to 20. So the value of x is 20. The two lines are parallel. The two lines are going to be parallel. Any questions on any of this here? Any questions on these three here? We good with these three here? Yes? Decide whether there is enough information to prove A is parallel to B. If so, state why. So 36, is there enough information to say that these two lines are parallel? Yes, why? Alternate exterior angle, I believe converse is what I have down, yes? For these here, we're going to be using the converses. The converses. Alternate exterior angle converse. I think I may, oh yeah, okay, I'll just do it. I'm going to give you all some leniency on this here. As long as you can get the correct one, alternate exterior angles, that'd be great. I'd really like you to be able to put converse on these because that's really the theorem we're using is the converse. Because the alternate exterior angle theorem states that if two lines are parallel and cut by a transversal, then the alternate exterior angles are congruent. That's not what we have here. We're trying to say if they are parallel. And the alternate exterior angle converse says that if two lines cut by a transversal and their alternate exterior angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. That's what we're really using for these here. So questions on 36 or 37? 37 would be what? Yes or no? Well, no. No. How about 38? What did we get for 38? If you noticed on the answer key, there's a massive gap, yes? On the answer key for 38, where it just says no, and then there's a massive blank spot next to it. Y'all see that? It just says no, and then it's a big gap. Because it's very tempting to say, and I kind of wanted to set it up so that it would be, yes, the consecutive interior angles. But will it always be the case that those two angles being congruent will make the lines parallel? Because what if they were both 20 degrees? Let's see what happens. Because if I said that this was 20 degrees and this was 20 degrees, it would mean that these both are 20 degrees because of vertical angles, yes? This one and this one are corresponding, so that would be 20. Wait a minute, that's this here, 20, 40, 60. That'd just be 80, wouldn't it? That's not 100. They would not be parallel. Y'all see this here? So just because they're congruent doesn't mean that they're going to be parallel. There's only one way that they could be. It is if both of those angles measure was what? There's one value that it would work. 90. 90 would be the only case that these two lines could be parallel. And again, with proofs, how many counterexamples or how many ways do we need to find that it doesn't work? One. We just found one with 20 degrees, yes? So it doesn't always work. 39 would be? Yes, because they are the alternate interior angle converse. 40 through 42. 40 through 42. Which one of those three we're going to look at? Because we're going to look at least one. Okay. We're going to need this formula. And so here, 40 through 42, find the equation of the line parallel to the given line and passes through the given point. So if it's parallel, the new slope would be what? It'd be the same because parallel lines have the same slope. So I can use that. Y minus our number, negative 7/8 times x minus our number. So what was the point they gave us that this line passes through? Passes through the point 812. The y value is, the x value is 8. So we plug that in. Now we just need to solve it for y equals mx plus b. So the first thing I need to do is I need to multiply through by negative 7/8. Well, that'll be negative 7/8x. Now you can do it in a calculator, do negative 7/8 times negative 8. Well, the negative and negative would give us a positive 7. Because 1/8 times 8 would actually simplify to 1. And we'll just have the 7. So I'd plug it in a calculator to do that. They give us 7. And last but not least, we need to get y by itself, so we need 2. Add 12 to both sides. And that is our line that is parallel. Questions on this here? Any questions on this here? We good with this here? Some of y'all still have the assignment with this here with graphing the lines. Some of you haven't started that one yet. 2.5 or 3.5. 3.5, that assignment. When it asks you to graph these lines, you have to graph the original one and the one that is parallel or perpendicular. If I have a point in the slope, we can graph it, yes? Because we can just graph that point and then use the slope over, up, rise over, run from there, yes? Did they give us a point for the new line on every single one? So if it's hard to find the y-intercept, use the point given in the slope. Any questions on 41 or 42? Either one of those that you all want to look at, 41 or 42. Y'all need to see another example of parallel lines. If we're good with parallel lines, let's look at 43 through 45. Find the equation of the line perpendicular to the given line. So we're still going to use the same formula. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Now, perpendicular slopes are the opposite reciprocal. To find the perpendicular slope, we need the opposite reciprocal. So the slope they gave us for the original line is negative 1/2. So since the original slope is negative, the new slope would be positive. So it should be a positive slope. Now the reciprocal, we have 1/2. To find the reciprocal, we would flip it, and it would become 2/1 or just 2. So our new slope, the slope for our new line would be 2. So we can plug that in. So we find the slope, and then we use the point. Now, the point they gave us is what? 9 15. 9 comma 15. Well, the y value is 15 and the x value is 9. Any questions on how we got to this point here? We good with this here? So what we need to do next is we need to distribute this here. Well, 2 times x would be 2x. 2 times negative 9 would be negative 18. We're multiplying through by 2. And then what do we need to do? We need to get y by itself by adding 15 to both sides. And when we add 15 to both sides, we get y is equal to 2x minus, and that's it. Questions on this here? Any questions on this here? Do we have any questions on 43 through 45? Any questions on 44?
So positive 8 over 7, Nancy, the perpendicular equation, it is also positive 7 over 8 rather than negative 7 over 8.
Okay, it needs to be negative 7 over 8.
Okay.
For 44? Yep, it needs to be negative 7 over 8. Yep. Okay, yep. Need to change that also. So let's look at this here just so. So the opposite reciprocal tells us that this is negative 7/8. So since the first slope is positive 8/7, since it's positive, the new one's going to be negative, and we have to flip it, which takes 8/7 to 7/8. Then we plug in our point. 32 comma negative 2. Negative 2 would be our y, and 32 would be our x. Well, a negative and negative will give us a positive. We need to distribute. Well, we'll get negative 7/8 x. Negative and a negative would give us a positive. Now, I would do negative 7/8 times negative 32 in the calculator because it will give you the answer. 32 would be negative 7 times 32 over 8. Well, this here would be 224 over 8, which is actually divisible. It's divisible by 8. This would be 1, 4, which would give us 28. And that was supposed to be negative, so it's actually positive. Plus 28. And last but not least, to get x or y by itself, we have to subtract 2, which gives us negative 7/8 x plus 26. Do we agree with everything else? I think it matches up with the rest of it except for that negative sign, yes? That was 44. What was the other one? 24? Yeah, it was 24. Any other questions on finding the equation of a line perpendicular? We good with these here? Yes? Determine if two lines are parallel or perpendicular. So how would I do this? I would find the slope of the line, yes? Well, slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I can do line 1 first. 5 minus 1 over 4 minus 2. Now, if you want to do this in a calculator, at this point here, do fraction key 5 minus 1 over 4 minus 2, that's fine. Well, 5 minus 1 is 4 minus 2 is 2, so this is just 2. Any questions on how we found the first slope? Slope of line 1. Now, if I do it for line 2, negative 10 minus 4 over 2 minus 9 would be negative 14 over negative 7, which is negative 2. Any questions on this here? Because they have opposite sides, one's positive, one's negative, these are perpendicular, yes? These two lines are perpendicular? If two lines are perpendicular, their slopes are what? The opposite reciprocal. Are these slopes the opposite reciprocal of each other? Or what else did it say? If two lines are perpendicular, if the product of their slope is negative 1, yes? What is 2 times negative 2? Negative. Are these perpendicular? Are these perpendicular? These are neither. Because the opposite reciprocal of 2, the opposite would be negative 1/2. Yes? Oh, it should be, yes, thank you. Oh, I'm glad someone said something. This is parallel, thank you. These would be parallel. I know I got that one right in the book, or not in the book, in the answer key. Okay. Let's do another one because I blundered that one. So again, this is why keeping track of stuff or writing stuff down is good. Also, if you plug that in a calculator, it would have fixed the sign for you. I'm guessing most of y'all have been plugging these in. Yes? Because you could plug this in, negative 10 minus 4 over 2 minus 9 in the calculator. It'll give you the correct answer. Questions on this here? Again, thank you. So let's do this one here. So we would have negative 5 minus 0 over 3 minus negative 1. Well, negative 5 minus 0 would be negative 5. A negative and a negative would make a positive, which would give us 4. So we have negative 5/4. Now the other one will have negative 5 minus 2 over negative 1 minus negative 1. Well, negative 5 minus 2 is negative 7. A negative and a negative would make a positive, so we get 0. This slope is undefined. Are these lines parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Well, the slopes aren't the same, are they? No. And they're not the flip of each other, so these here are neither. They're neither. Questions on 48? Do we want to see how number 48 works? Are we good with 48? Okay. 49 or, I think, is it? Yeah. So, for line 1, we'll have 3 minus 1 over 0 minus 3. Well, 3 minus 1 is 2 over negative 3, so we have negative 2/3. Now, the slope for the other one will have 4 minus negative 5 over -1 minus -7. Well, negative and negative would make a positive, which would give us 9. Negative and negative would give us a positive, which would give us 6. Well, 6/9 is the same as 3/2, yes? So are these two the reciprocal of each other? Well, they flipped. Is 2 over 3 the flip of 3 over 2? So they are reciprocals, and for them to be perpendicular, they have to be opposite reciprocals. Are these opposite reciprocals? Now, another way we can check is we can take the product of it, multiply these two together. Well, -2 times 3 is -6. 3 times 2 is. And if their product gives us -1, then they are perpendicular. The product of two slopes are perpendicular if it's equal to -1. Two lines are perpendicular, their slopes are perpendicular if their product is equal to -1. So if you want to check it and double make sure, multiply them together and see if you get -1. If you do, they are perpendicular. If you don't, they are not. Questions on this here? We good with this here? Questions on 49 or 50? Question on 49 or 50? So 49 and 50, we're just finding the slopes of those lines. They just gave us 2 points. We're doing essentially what we just did and then seeing which lines are parallel and which lines are perpendicular. So if there's no questions on either one of those, we've covered everything that's going to be on the review, or everything on the test. Now, one section we skipped is not going to show up because I looked back at it. I did not include that. But everything else will be. So if there are no other questions on the review sheet, we are done for today.